Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another EAC meeting. I'm Diane Stanton, Director of External Affairs, and joining me and co-moderating today is Kim Petz, Assistant Director for Benefits and Services within Member Account Services specifically. Before we get started, just some couple of housekeeping items. Closed captioning is available for those who need it. And at the end of the meeting today, there is a one question survey. So please don't log off immediately. We would really appreciate your feedback so that, again, we can continue to refine the agendas and make this the best use of everyone's time today. I also wanted to welcome and announce we have a new a new executive for the Public Affairs branch, and it's Teresa Schilling. Teresa joined the organization last Monday, so we're on week 2, but we're very excited to have her. I'm looking forward to working with her going forward. And just wanted to, Teresa, would you like to say a word or two?
Sure. Thanks, Diane. I'm so happy to join CalSTRS, and I'm really excited about Diane and the team. And I look forward to working with all of you. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Teresa. I think that is it as far as housekeeping. Kim?
So welcome, everybody. I'm Kimberly Petz from Member Account Services. I'm one of the assistant directors. And hopefully you're all seeing, those of you that are on Zoom with us are all seeing the screen that has the information regarding our Q&As. So if you do want to ask questions during the presentation today, you have a couple of options. For those of you that are call-in only, you can still use our advisory committee at calstrs.com as always. Zoom has a couple of features for you. You can raise your hand and we will call on you, and then the technical folks will send you a message to unmute your microphone since we have you all muted during the presentation right now. And then there's also on the bottom of your screen, you should see something that says Q&A, and you can ask questions that way. What I do ask of you guys is that during the presentations, we are hoping that the presenters will pause naturally in their presentations for questions rather than ask them as they come up. So if you ask a question in the Q&A, it might not get answered immediately, but we will do our very best to get them all answered. And if we need to, we will send a Q&A document out to everybody. I do see that we have a hand raised, and I'm wondering if that's testing the features or if there's a question. And there was a Q&A in the chat really quickly before we get started about the PowerPoint presentation. The PowerPoint presentation will be available to everybody after the meeting. And I'm not sure if it went out with the materials, but it will be there. Now I see a whole bunch of hands going up. So if you're testing that feature, make sure you hit lower your hand so that we don't call on you. And so looks like before we jump into the first part of our presentation here, I'm going to start with Min. We saw your hand first. So Min, if we could get Min unmuted and have them ask their question. And also the PowerPoint is available on calstrs.com. So you can download that now if you want to follow along with us.
Min, go ahead and unmute your mic if you're able to.
No, I don't have a question.
Okay, so if you don't have a question anymore, please go ahead and lower your hands so that we don't call on you. The same place that you see raise your hand, you should see something that says lower your hand. Maria? Maria Pasquale? Oh, okay. Looks like that was a test. Okay. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. And if we need to stop for Q&A after Joycelyn's presentation, we will do that. And so I believe she is our first presenter.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. We'll go to there's the agenda. And then the next slide. So we've started the legislative session and we're right in the middle of bill introductions. The introduction deadline is February 19th. So I'm here to give you an update on what we know so far. There's a lot of time left and usually the bulk of the bills are introduced in those last 2 days. So that's when we get really busy trying to see what's out there that may affect us. But I want to start with our sponsored bills. And like always, we're going to have a housekeeping bill. This year, the plan is for it to be combined with CalPERS and any of the county systems that have changes that they need to make in a housekeeping bill. That's what happened last year with AB 2101. It seemed to work out. So I think the legislative committee staff want to do a similar thing this year. I also provided the draft language that ties into these bullets on the screen right now. So you can follow along. They pretty much line up in order, which is really handy. The first change we're making is extending our authority to allow for e-signatures for cash balance benefit and Medicare premium payment programs. We have this authority already for defined benefit program and this associated with, let's say, retirement benefit applications and things like that. And we just, especially in this remote situation that we're all living in, we want to make sure that's available for all of our programs. So that's the first change we're looking for. The second is clarifying administration of service credit purchases. And so there's an obsolete code section that's mentioned in the statute that refers to a section that was applied to the cash balance benefit program that's been repealed. So that's no longer there. We want to clean that up. And then we want to be clear that if you're purchasing service credit for past service that wasn't counted toward your DB benefit yet, you can't purchase more than 1 year of service credit in a year. And that's kind of what that obsolete code section was related to. And so we want to make sure that that's the case because as you know, you can't have more than 1 year of service credit in one school year. So we're making that clear. And then because the bill last year kind of came together at the end of session and they combined all of the different provisions, there were some drafting errors. So we're just cleaning those up. And that's kind of the last 2 sections that are included in the draft language. So pretty straightforward at this point in time. We will keep you posted if anything gets added to that because sometimes there are things that come up throughout the year that end up in this vehicle. If we go to the next slide, I can cover the other 2 sponsored bills we're doing this year. You've heard about these before. They got introduced last year and they did not move forward because of the pandemic and the legislature's focus on things related to that, but they'll be reintroduced this year. Our first is giving the board authority on the investment procurement process for our investment managers and investment advisors. And Assemblymember Cooley will be authoring that bill again. And our CalSTRS IRA bill allows us to offer a traditional IRA in addition to a Roth IRA and to get contributions directly from members and their spouses. And it's not just members, actually, it's all school employees. So you may be eligible for CalSTRS IRA too, if this goes through, and our Pension 2 program. Assemblymember Rodriguez will be authoring this bill this year. And we've been talking about a couple of past EACs, the recovery of overpayments or statute of limitations proposal. So I want to make sure you're updated and let you know that we presented that proposal to the board in December. And it was decided we wouldn't move forward in 2021 with that proposal, but that we'll continue to work on it. So governmental relations is going to be engaging with internal staff and external stakeholders on that proposal to see where we can get for 2022. So we'll see if we'll have a sponsored bill next year. But as of right now, nothing's moving forward, but we do have a dedicated work group internally that will be looking at all of the issues related to statute of limitations, recovery of overpayments when a benefit is overpaid. And then we'll go to the next slide. And then as for the regulations update, we had our public comment regulations presented to the board last week. It's kind of the end of the process in a sense where they approved the text that was out there. And we're going to the Office of Administrative Law now to wrap up the process. They get to review all of our documents in the language, let us know if we get to have those put into the register. So that's coming to a conclusion. And then our appeals regulations, which we've also talked with you about in the past, just want to give you an update for now, is that we're not moving forward to the board at this point in time. We may have communicated that March looked like when we would go to the board to start the regulatory process, but we're not going to. The earliest we would go is May, but this is a similar situation to the recovery of overpayments where we're continuing to work on the language with internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. And so we'll be engaging more on that as we move forward. And I will stop there to see if there are questions that I can answer. And there's some reminders about how you can ask the question. I see one hand raised from Bernie. I think if you can unmute yourself, you can ask the question.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Jocelyn, I would like to know who is that dedicated group that is overseeing the overpayment issues?
The work group I referred to is internal staff. So we have a couple different people from different business areas within CalSTRS. So public affairs, service retirement, member account services, legal, audit services, and the enterprise strategy management is also helping us with that process. I may have left someone off, but I think that covers it.
So there's no one directly that a teacher that is experiencing this clawback for many thousands of dollars to talk to someone up there about their concerns and their issues.
So then that would go through the more regular contacts that members have. So I don't know if they've been in touch with customer service. We do have an ombudsman who works with members that are to a certain point in the process and need assistance. That person that you're speaking of may have received information from our legal office on an appeals process. And so it depends on where they're at with their specific situation.
Yeah. Well, the appeals process doesn't work because we've written 4 appeals with no response from CalSTRS.
Okay, so that sounds like something that's a specific situation. So you'll probably have to get in touch with us separately to see what happened with that and where the next step is to contact somebody within CalSTRS.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And I will mention, since we were talking about external stakeholders, obviously in that situation, specific member, but we do work with a variety of groups that represent members, employers, business officials at employers. We come to EAC, we have a client advisory committee. So that's kind of the we are trying to get policy feedback as we're developing these kinds of proposals.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions? Okay. I will remain in the meeting in case anything comes up later in the presentations. Thank you.
It looks like we don't have any more questions for Joycelyn. So we're going to move on to the CalSTRS Financial Reporting Survey. Go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you, Kim. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Banky Fatsola, and I'm the Senior Financial Reporting Manager for CalSTRS. And today I'll just be talking about a brief survey that we'll be conducting with employers. And the purpose of this item is really to bring it to all your attention and just give you some details on what it will entail. And again, the overall purpose is to provide or to gain or to make you aware of it, rather, just to facilitate, hopefully facilitate a better response. But with that said, if you could go to the next slide. So this financial reporting survey, the purpose of it is to gain information or insight into how employers are using the information that CalSTRS provides for financial reporting on the Medicare Premium Payment Program. One thing is that I realize that not necessarily everybody in this group is involved or directly involved in the financial reporting process rather. But to the extent that you're not directly involved in it, I hope that bringing this to your attention would allow you to share what you're learning, what you learn here about the survey with your colleagues that are directly involved in that process. So before going further, talking about the survey specifically, I'll just provide a little bit of background on the MPP program. So if we can go to the next slide. Just as a reminder, the MPP program is CalSTRS post-retirement benefit plan, health benefit plan rather. And what it does is it provides eligible members of the defined benefit plan with, it pays their Medicare premiums for Part A and also pays the Part A and Part B late enrollment surcharges. If we go to the next slide. So under current accounting guidance, under GASB 75, employers are required to report their proportionate share or their share of the liability related to this benefit program. And to facilitate that, CalSTRS has provided various forms of information to help with that. We provide currently some information in our financial statements, in our disclosures, which are included within the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, that we publish annually. We also have a separate specific report called the Other Post-Employment Benefit Information Report. And this has information related to the MPP program specifically, including things like the proportionate share for each employer, some information on the liabilities, some disclosure notes, and things that will just help overall to help employers in their reporting. We also have frequently asked questions on our website, on CalSTRS.com, for any questions that are that employers commonly had. So we have a broad variety of information that we provide. And so the survey is really to understand how this information is being used. And if we go to the next slide, so the survey will be administered by a third party on behalf of CalSTRS. We'll be a firm called Eide Bailey will be assisting us with this effort. And so there will be the emails or the communication that we receive will be coming from this party on behalf of CalSTRS. And it's a brief survey. It's not meant to take a lot of time. And it should be around 5 to 10 questions. Also, with regards to the timing, the survey will be held sometime in mid-February. So within the next few weeks is when we're expecting the survey to be sent out. And so once we get these results, we'll be doing some analysis to understand how the information is being used and look for ways to assess the current information and see if it's adequate or if there's anything we need to add. And again, the last thing I'll say again is that the point of bringing it to this forum here again is just to provide awareness, because I know in this environment, working in a remote environment and doing things virtually, there's a heightened sense of understanding the needs for being security conscious and just trying to avoid the survey going right into spam bin. So hopefully if you would be the one responding to the survey, hopefully this makes you aware of it. So when you see it come through, it's trustworthy. And also if you're not involved in it, if you could share that with your colleagues that are directly involved with the financial reporting. And with that, I'll take any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you. It looks like there's a question from Teresa in our Q&A about whether or not it's going to be sent to the districts or just the county office.
It will be sent to the districts. It will be sent to the districts, and it will also probably be sent to the county office because I think they do some separate reporting as well.
And there's a follow-up from Lucinda asking how the survey is going to be sent, and will it come from CalSTRS or from the third party?
The survey will be via email, and it will come through the third party. We will include some CalSTRS branding to make sure, to clarify that it is from CalSTRS, but it will be sent through the third party's proprietary software.
And do we know which contact person it will go to? Will it go to the superintendent?
So we have a current list of contacts, and I believe it's the same contacts that the contributions unit and Mass use. So it will go to those parties. So definitely feel free to forward it on if you're not the right person and you receive it.
Okay. Also, please, if you do raise your hand to ask questions, please make sure that you identify yourself and the district or county that you represent, so that we note that in our notes when we follow up with you guys. Thank you, Banky. We really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on, we'll be bringing up Mia Tanoya from Member Account Services to talk about pension solution and our training approach for training employers.
Great. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mia Tanoya Hill. You may recognize me from other webinars, same face, slightly different last name as of recently. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the Member Account Services Employer Training Approach, and I'm going to share with you some of the steps that we've already taken and some steps that we are taking to get you as the employer trained for FR2, for our pension solution. And we're going to talk about some of the courses that are going to be available March of 2021, which is quickly approaching. So I want to talk to you a little bit about our purpose today. So pension solution has been designed to replace our legacy system. And this enhanced system is going to offer increased flexibility as businesses and technologies evolve. You've had a chance to get into the system, you've seen that it's much more user-friendly, and maybe you've had a chance to interact with some of those improved technologies. Well, with those improvements comes the need to build knowledge and skills. So not only do we need to train you as the employer to be able to use the new system, we'll have to train our internal staff to make sure they're able to provide you the same level of customer support as they did with the previous system. So the employer training plan is designed to provide the details to carry out that employer training and provide that training support to you, the employer. So let's talk about the scope. So training and development, which is my team, will prepare employers for success by doing a couple different things. So the first thing that we're doing is we're using a training plan to guide the design for your success in the new system. We're designing, developing, and delivering those FR2 courses. And we're also using the ADDIE approach. So the ADDIE approach is a training method that we're going to talk about in just a moment, but that is what we're doing, and we have been doing for about a year now, a little bit over a year, I believe. So we're going to be providing member account services staff with the training to build their knowledge and skills so they're able to support you. So while you're going through learning these materials, that employer services and other business areas are able to still support you the same way as we have before. All right, so you heard me mention a term called ADDIE, and it's a training development model. It's a training development model that we analyze your training needs, we design a training plan, and then we develop the training materials. And that's what we're currently doing. We're currently developing the training materials. And we've been going through this process, as I mentioned, for over a year now to make sure we're providing you the best content possible. So our next steps are to implement the training program. As I mentioned, we're going to have some new courses coming out March of 2021. And then we're going to have to evaluate the training delivery and the material. So we're going to have to make sure that our training's been effective and cover gaps as we see needed. Next slide. So with that being said, that's the training model. That's how we've been developing, designing, and that's our plan to continue to make sure that our training materials are effective for you all. But what are the roles and responsibilities that CalSTRS has to take on? Well, we have our posting the training announcement. So member account services main roles and responsibilities are to post training announcements on SO and the employer support portal. And we're going to provide employer support similar to how we've done in the current system with your teacher's retirement law inquiries. We're going to continue to provide that employer support with system navigation and reporting requirements, as well as communicating those system updates. We're also going to be serving as, go one back, please. We're also going to be serving as subject matter experts. So as subject matter experts, and these are from different business areas, we are all coming together to make sure that the information you are receiving is correct and that the content you're receiving is going to be applicable to your business. And we're also going to be providing secure employer website training. So that is what my team is responsible for. We are designing, developing, and implementing those training materials. And these are for report sources and third-party administrators with support from the rest of the division as needed. So we're all working together to make sure that this product is the best that it can possibly be. Thank you. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about the tools and technologies you're going to be using for these employer training opportunities. So the first thing that we're going to be using are computer-based trainings. As many of you have already taken, we have computer-based trainings available on PALMS or the Pension Administration Learning Management System. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to be showing you a little bit about PALMS, how to navigate it, and some really wonderful resources that we have on there. But computer-based trainings include the FR2 material, so that's SO training, and they're also going to include some TRL material, so can serve a bevy of needs. And we're going to be coming out with more resources on PALMS, so if you have not registered for PALMS already, highly recommend you do so. There's a lot of great material on there and will continue to be added to there. But those computer-based trainings, they are self-paced. You can take them at any time and you can return to them at any time. So if you're somebody who likes to take things multiple times to really cement that information, you can take these trainings as much as you want. So then we have the employer readiness environment, also known as the ERE. This is a non-production environment for you, the employer, to gain hands-on experience with the system, working in a virtual production environment with real data. Now the ERE does require a login, and it is a different login than PALMS. I have been asked that question before. They are separate logins, and we'll talk about in a minute what to do if you maybe get a little lost with those login informations. And then we have the Employer Support Portal. The Employer Support Portal is a central online resource for access to the Employer Toolkit, job aids. So as I mentioned, if you get stuck logging into PALMS or navigating, there are job aids that will help you do that, and links to other employer resources. And as I mentioned, we are coming out with a lot more employer resources that are going to be available on the Employer Support Portal and through PALMS. So highly recommend visiting those sites if you have not had a chance to already. And unlike so, the Employer Support Portal is accessible to anyone. You don't need a login. Anyone can go and check out those resources that we have. All right, next slide. Thank you. So as I mentioned, Employer Services is here to assist you with any questions or any issues you may have related to PALMS or the ERE. So as I mentioned, if you're having trouble logging into one or maybe got locked out of one, please feel free to contact Employer Services. That's at employerhelp@calstrs.com. Hear our team say that all the time, and they're going to be able to help you resolve those issues. And then we have instructor-led opportunities. So these can be in person or through webinars, and they provide that direct instruction and interaction with trainers in real time. And as many of you know, due to the current state, a lot of that would probably look like webinars at this point in time. All right, before I continue, what questions do you have about those tools and technologies, maybe any of those resources that we've just discussed before we move on into what's available in PALMS?
We do have a raised hand, Mia, from Min. Min, if you want to unmute and ask your question from Mia, that would be great.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's not. I didn't have any questions, but my computer so also load the hands, not the raise the hand, so I don't have any idea why it keep.
Okay. Well, thank you for letting us know.
Right.
No worries. If there are not any other questions, though, I will continue on to the rest of the presentation. All right. So let's go to our next slide. There we go. So employer CBTs, let's talk about what's already available on PALM. So we have 4 courses available, and they were made available March 2nd of 2020. So you could leave EAC today and go take those trainings. And if you have not already, highly recommend just taking a look at some of what we have available to you. Those 4 courses are contribution reporting, employment maintenance, and introduction to the new SO, and new file format employment file. So those are some of the courses that we currently have available. Can I see our next slide? Thank you. So within contribution reporting and within all of these courses, we have a bevy of different modules. So contribution reporting, as you can see, covers a lot of different information, an introduction to what that's going to look like, how to upload the file, process it, the different processes for report sources and report units, managing that contribution data, payroll summaries, how to merge or delete them or submit them, associating payments, and payroll summary posting. So that's some of the information we currently have available to you. Oh, thank you. Yeah, next slide. So next up, we have employment maintenance. So employment maintenance includes online employment transactions, employment file upload, employment file processing, and managing that data. Now, we are requiring some new things in the new system. So employment maintenance helps get you familiar with some of those things and some of those processes. All right, and then we have the introduction to the new secure employer website. Highly recommend this to anyone who has not already had a chance to get into the system. It includes some of the basics like how to log into the secure employer website, how to navigate it, how to register for that information, and get yourself familiar with what that new system looks like. All right, and then our last course here is the new file format employment file. It has the introduction to that new file format and the enrollment transaction types. As I mentioned, this can be new to many of us, and so just getting ourselves familiarized with that information can be a really great resource. All right. So I see I have a couple questions before I talk about the additional modules that are going to be added to those courses. I'm going to take a few questions. So I see a question here. Is there a login for PALMS, a separate login for SO, and the employer readiness environment? That is correct. So your employer readiness environment, your username is often your email address, whereas your PALMS login information is your username that you created. So that can be the difference. Now you could have created the same username and the same password for all of these. That would depend on you, but you probably, I would say for PALMS, you probably didn't. So it's possible that you do have a separate password if you create a new password for every, or if you're somebody who always uses the same password. We're not going to ask any questions on what your password is. And I see the new system is far from user friendly. And all right, so I understand that there are some difficulties with the new system and there are some adjustments that will be made. We're going to talk about some of the resources that will be available to you, and maybe some of the additional resources coming out will help you navigate that system. All right, and we have one more question here.
Mia, I can touch on the answer for this one for you if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much.
So going live, let's talk about what that means really quickly. There's two parts to going live. One is using the system, and then the other part is our new file format, right? And so everybody will go live at the same time, but not everybody will necessarily be ready to go live with new file format at the same time. The system will allow you to use the old file format when we go live. The waiver process, though, is still in development, and we will be working with you for the waiver process. The form is not already established and we don't have a due date yet. So we will be working with you through the employer readiness team, which is the team that's been reaching out to you for your readiness visits. And so if you have questions about the waiver process, the employer readiness team is who you would be reaching out to. And if you don't know who your rep is for employer readiness, you can reach out to your employer services representative and they can direct you to the right resource. Thanks, Mia.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kim, for sharing that, that in-depth information for us all. So if there are no further questions, let's talk about the additional modules available on PALM. So there are 3 existing courses that we are going to add modules to that are going to be available spring of 2021. We are shooting for that March 1st of 2021 date. And so contribution reporting, employment maintenance, and introduction to the new secure employer website are all going to have some courses added, or they're going to have modules added, excuse me. Next slide. All right. So with contribution reporting, we are adding employer reporting requests. This is how to view and process these requests, including creating adjustments, verifying suppressed warnings, and fulfilling requests for supporting documentation. Next slide. With the employment maintenance course, we are adding a module on employee match file, and this is going to show you how to upload an employee match file and how to download an employee match file response file. Next slide. So then we have introduction to the new secure employer website. We are adding we are adding 3 new modules. So that includes electronic content management, also known as ECM. This is a tool that employers can use to upload and view member and organization documents to CalSTRS. Then we have processing pending work items. So this is a panel on the bottom of the dashboard, and it's just going to show you some functionality on how to use that feature. Secure messaging, and that includes how to create a secure message and how to respond to one. So as many of you often use the current secure messaging for confidential documents such as birth certificate or social security card, those kind of things that we want to keep secure and private. That course will show you how to use that. Next slide, please. So those are the courses. We can go back 2 slides. One more back. Thank you so much. So those are the courses that we currently have available and modules we're adding to those current courses. Let's talk about the 4 additional courses that are going to be available to you spring of 2021. So the first one we're going to talk about is employee change requests. Next slide, please. So employee change requests, that includes how to submit various employee change requests using the new SO. So each type of change request is a module, as you can see listed in the bullets. You'll notice that there is an asterisk by reduced workload program. That course, we are currently working on it, but there are some delays due to system limitations and certain functionality that won't be available till MR2. So we are working on that, getting that out as soon as possible, but there may be some delays for that specific course. Next slide, please. Then in employer organization maintenance, we cover employer contact types, managing employer organization information, and cash balance employer organization tasks. So this will show you how to add or edit that employer organization information and how to submit requests to CalSTRS. So for the cash balance employer organization task, that is specific obviously to cash balance employers. There's 2 tasks that are really specific to you, those reporting schedules and contribution rates. So highly recommend you take that course if that applies to you. Next slide, please. So for the program enrollment requests, this will show you how to submit those requests, and those are going to be specifically related to the retirement incentives. All right, next slide, please. I apologize, the garbage truck is passing, and I hope it's not messing up the audio too much. So service credit purchases, these are initiated by employees, but you as the employer must approve them. And so this CBT is specifically related to your role as the employer in service credit purchase requests in the new secure employer website. Right. Next slide. So let's talk about the availability. So after the courses are developed, the implementation step will commence. So we are wrapping up our development and we're getting ready to implement these courses to you. And so the target audience includes 92 employers and 7 third-party administrators. They're going to be housed, as I mentioned, on Palms. So that is where you're going to be able to access them and return to them at any time. So in each of these trainings, we're going to reference job aids, and those job aids are going to be available to you on the employer support portal. And those job aids are going to be specific to the tasks, walking you through to just provide you another way to learn the material or to walk yourself how to do something. All right, next slide, please. So finally, we will evaluate the effectiveness of our training delivery and our training material. So we conduct what's known as a level 1 and a level 2 evaluation. And we do this for our 92 employers and 7 third-party administrators, representing 1,791 employers. So the level 1 will focus on how people feel about the training experience, those emotions related to that training experience. And our level 2 focuses on knowledge retention and the understanding of the content. So is our training feeling effective, and is our training being effective in the long term? And so that feedback we receive from you as the employer will be analyzed by my team using a SWOT analysis. So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So that is something that we analyze to see areas where we can continue to improve our modules and improve our trainings to better serve you, the employer. All right, next slide, please. So I'm going to take a brief moment and I'm going to pull up the PALMS website so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And I'm also going to show you a new resource that we've just come out with and share that information with you. Before I do that, are there any questions? Talina, that is a great question. So will the service credit purchase request require district or county approval? And let us parking lot that for you. My manager, Manila Valmani, is online and she is helping us record this information. Unless she knows off the top of her head, unfortunately, we have 44 courses and a lot of information contained within each module. So I will have to get back to you on that specific question.
Hi, yes, this is Manila. I agree with Mia. We'll parking lot this and make sure that we get the answer to you after the presentation.
Yes. And then I see we have a question about how many districts are ready to go with their new file formatting reporting. That I will also defer just so we can get you that, that correct answer, Manila. If I don't know that we have that off the top of our head today, but those are something we can look into and get back to you on.
Yes, I think that's something that ERT is working on, is working with the employers on in their employer readiness visits and those discussions that they're having with you. I'm sure that we'll have the answer to that fairly soon.
I will say with respect to how many districts are ready to go with new file format, that's a moving target currently because a lot of districts and counties are in the process of getting ready. And so, but Manila's correct. Our employer readiness team is the one that's handling all of that. And again, as we get closer and closer to deployment, we have counties and districts that are getting closer and closer to being ready for that. Dory's asking, are the districts finding the changes difficult? Again, that is one of those things that's a case by case situation. And I think that kind of answer depends on whether or not they're custom changes or working with a vendor. I think, one of the things we can do for our next EAC is bring back John Hammond, who is our employer readiness team manager and handling a lot of those details. And we can have him do a presentation on where the status of that process is for all of you.
All right. And then I see a question from Teresa here, also interested, and we'll provide that information for everyone for that service credit purchases. It does replace the current verification leave form, if that is closer to what you're wondering about. So that is something that we can follow up more specifically after this training. So if those are our current questions, I will, as I mentioned, share my screen. So for anyone who has not had a chance to get into PALMS, our pension administration learning management system, as I mentioned, there are a lot of different resources here available. So as you can see, I've already logged in. So that's our first step. You'll have to log in. If you have not logged in, you've never registered before, there is a document on the employer support portal that details how you would log in and navigate through PALMS, but we're also showing you today. So I've already logged in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to all courses because the ones that pre-populate, maybe those aren't the ones that I'm interested in today. So we organize this by folder. So we have our new secure employer website trainings. We have teachers, retirement law, CBTs, our in-person training resources. So if you've been to any of our webinars these past few quarters, and then we have our employer onboarding resources folder. This is the new one. So this is the one we are very proud to share with you today. So many of you, or maybe some of you noticed that we came out with an employer onboarding checklist not too long ago. And some of you provided us feedback when we were in that beta stage of testing that employer onboarding checklist. And with that feedback, we decided to improve the form. We decided to improve that checklist and really provide you guys better resources. So that checklist details, as you can see, the CalSTRS overview, creditable service, creditable compensation, defined benefit membership, reduced workload program, and reporting in the secure employer website. Now, I will say that the reporting in the secure employer website section here is referring to the current system. It is not in reference to the new system, but we will be ready to update it when that time comes. But this is for that new, it's for that current system, but is ready to be updated for the new system at that time. So the employer onboarding checklist, I like to think of that as the tool, right? It's something I can print out, have at my desk, and I can check off as I go through the resources. But the site in Palms, this folder, is really where all of those resources live. So for example, you can go through the employer onboarding checklist and search all the documents yourself, but we got feedback from you, the employer, that that's a little bit cumbersome to have to go through all of that. You want those documents easily accessible to you. So as you can see, if I go into CalSTRS overview, I've just been hired by my district or my county, and they hand me this document. I log into Palms, and this is what I see. I can watch member videos that really explain to me what CalSTRS is and what that means for somebody to be a member with CalSTRS. I can read some different member publications, and I can read some of the employer support portal resources that are available to me. Similarly, let's into creditable service. So I'm learning about what service is creditable to CalSTRS, so on and so forth. It includes that education codes will link you to Ledge info, so you get that current, most updated information. Our employer directives includes that information there, also found on calstrs.com, but you can just come here and find that resource. And it also links to the computer-based trainings, same ones on Palms, because we are still on Palms. It's the same ones, just another way to access that material if you are going through the checklist physically, if you're just walking yourself through it. And so this information serves as a guide, just walking through that information and learning about CalSTRS and the different resources we have currently available to you and some of the legislation that we often reference. You'll hear myself or members of my team often go, well, in 22119.5, it says this about creditable service, or in 22119.2, it says this about creditable compensation. And so this resource, after a training, you're thinking, well, let me look at some of those resources. Let me go back and let me think about some of those things. This resource can also be used for a veteran employee who just wants to refresh on the way CalSTRS is looking and what exact education codes or California Code of Regulations that we are looking at. And it includes different resources, as I've mentioned. Incredible compensation, there are quite a few, right? We can see that there are a lot of different resources available to us, a lot of different circulars and directives. And we did get that feedback that some of the circulars, they were difficult to find because they're sorted by year. And so we've added that. So if you're ever wanting to search for this outside of Palms, that we've also included that year there for you. The last thing I will share about this, so this also includes forms, so links to calstrs.com on certain forms that we have available, like the ES350 and the ES372. And then we also include in our reporting in the Secure Employer website, the various resources in the Secure Employer website. As I've mentioned, this is for the current system, and so some of those things will be locked behind that SO login. Not everybody has access to SO, and we do understand that, and we encourage them to contact their county administrator if that person, if that employee does actually need that access for those materials, or if that's something that is not a part of their job duties and they would not need that access. So we do make it known that not everybody will perform those same duties and might need that same information. So I'm going to stop sharing now and see if there are any questions that I can answer at this time.
Mia, I'm not sure if you're seeing Tammy's comment.
Yes.
So Tammy's comment is about the service credit purchase approval and a process that I don't think we have firmed up on that, whether or not the counties will be approving a service credit purchase, at least that I know of. Mia, do you know differently?
I would say that that is something that we will have to follow up. As I mentioned, some of the modules that I was just talking about, they are still in development. We are still fine tuning some of those details, and I don't want to provide you information that is incorrect or incomplete, right? There are sometimes many steps to the answers to these questions. So I do apologize for any questions that are specifically what is contained in a course or what is specific to a process. We probably won't be able to answer today just because a lot of that is still in development now. So I do apologize, but Tammy, we will get back to you with the most complete, accurate answer we can after the training.
The idea of the service credit purchase process, we will add that to our list of things to follow up with everybody that's on the call. And then Bernie is saying, is there going to be a module to clear up the confusion in coding for pension amounts in DB and DBS accounts? 1 in 5 districts are having serious issues in this area as far back as 2011, pointing, I think I'm a little confused specifically on what you're asking. It sounds to me like you're asking about whether or not compensation goes directly to DB or goes directly to DBS, which is a creditable compensation issue and should be covered under our creditable compensation training that you guys have on POMS, right, Mia?
Yes, so that that information would be under our creditable compensation, but I would say that we don't necessarily look at it as necessarily what goes to DB and what goes to DBS. We look at it, is it salary or is it remuneration in addition to salary? If it's remuneration in addition to salary, is it an ongoing payment or is it limited term? And the answers to some of those questions will eventually lead you to if it goes into DB or into DBS, but it's a different way, I think, of framing the question that may help you decide what reporting codes to use. And we try to align that with our reporting codes on if something is salary or remuneration in addition to salary, also known as special pay, if some of you are more familiar with that term.
Bernie, I would love to have our employer services representative for your area reach out. So if you could maybe send us an email to the advisory committee email address and let us know what county or district you're from, that would be fantastic. And we'll make sure that someone reaches out and to see if they can assist. I do see that I think that was Bernie's hand that was raised. So I think we got to her question. I don't see any other raised hands or any other Q&As in the chat box, Mia. So thank you so much. As always, fantastic.
Yes, thank you guys so much for having me. And if you guys have reporting questions or TRL questions later on, please feel free to send them to employerhelp@calstrs.com so we can best serve you. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you, Mia.
Thanks, Mia.
So as we start to get ready for the open forum part of our meeting time, I'm actually going to, before we go into that, bring up Karen Meza, who is one of our managers in member account services, with some updates for you that were not big enough to be agenda items, but we want to make sure you have them from her. And then once Karen is done, again, just like the rest of the meeting, if you have a question, you can use the raise your hand feature, you can use the Q&A option, or if you are on as a call-in participant, you can use the advisory committee at calstrs.com email as always. So Karen, if you would like to join us.
Hello, thank you, Kim, for that introduction. As Kim said, my name is Karen Meza, and some of you may recognize my face or my name. I was a trainer actually until this past November. I was on Mia's team and we worked wonderfully together, and I really, really enjoyed being a trainer and training you all. But I have now taken that step into management, and I am the new Nicole, if you will. For those of you that, I'm sure everyone knows Nicole Snyder. I have replaced her as manager, and so you'll be seeing a lot more of me, especially in the EACs. But don't fear, Nicole is still with us. She also got a promotion, so yay, Nicole, congrats. And she is my manager now. So she's still here, she's still involved, and now we get to work together even closer, and we get to assist you all with questions that you may have. So super excited, looking forward to that. The last time I was at an EAC, I think was last year, actually, last February at CalPERS. I presented on, I believe it was RWP. So just a little refresher for you all. But today I want to just, like Kim said, I just want to talk about a few things that have come up that we wanted to address with you all. The first one, just wanted to let you all know that the Winter Employer Connect newsletter was released last week. So hopefully you all got to take a look at that and see some information in there that we have for you. And then the next few things I want to talk about are really more COVID related. You know, it's been almost a year. I cannot believe I've been working from home for about 11 months now. That's incredible. So throughout this process of COVID and kind of learning how things are working with the schools and the government, some schools, employers are starting to find new ways to, you know, to reinvent how they're working. So one of the questions that we've been getting is some districts are adding more base days, right? Maybe they need to extend the school year a little bit. Maybe they need more time for, because they're doing lots of virtual teaching, things like that. Adding base days to your school year, not a problem, right? As long as you have the minimum days that we require in the law, then that is totally fine. We just want you to make sure that you are getting that approved. It's in a written contractual agreement that you have those new added base days. And typically what's going to happen is if you're adding base days, the salary is probably going to increase as well, right? Totally fine. Just make sure you're getting all that. Again, it's been approved. It's on a salary schedule and in that written contractual agreement. Another common couple questions that we've been getting are about providing extra leave. Some employers are providing extra sick leave days. Totally fine. That's great. Again, we want everything to be in that written contractual agreement, of course. And we do want to remind you that anything over 12 sick leave days a year is considered excess sick leave. So just keep that in mind. And then in relation to that, some employers are also giving other types of compensated leaves for maybe quarantining. Maybe there's other COVID related issues that employers are providing leave for. Again, that's fine. There was that recent change with the leave of absence law. Any compensated employer approved leaves of absence are credible compensation when they're taken. So you're just going to just report that to us as credible compensation, as if the employee is there, as long as it's been employer approved, of course. And as with any unused accumulated leave, if it's cashed out, not credible to CalSTRS. Okay, so when we're talking about that, the other leave or any of those leaves, when they're taken, it's fine. You report it as if they are there. And then there were also a couple questions about retirees. So there was I believe it was one of the first executive orders that the governor issued back in March, changed a little bit of the government code when it comes to retiree restrictions. So it did change the 180-day break in service requirement, and it was suspended, meaning that employees that were retirees under the government code did not have to wait that 180 days, period. However, that did not impact the education code, did not impact CalSTRS. So CalSTRS is still business as usual. The retirees still do have to wait that 180-day separation from a service period. So just wanted to give you that distinction that, yes, we are aware that there was that that order from the governor, but that only impacted the government codes, which does not actually authorize, those are not our laws. We are under the education code. And that is actually all I have for you. So what questions do you have about those COVID items that I just brought up? I see a hand raised. Lucinda, go ahead, unmute yourself, Lucinda. Santa Cruz.
Hi.
Hi.
Just a quick question regarding the retirees, and especially with COVID, and we've had fires and floods and everything here in our county. For retirees, do we still have to abide by the earning retiree limit as well? Is there any exemptions for that? Because we've had retirees working and a lot of them are getting close to that limitation already, and we still need them. So I'm just wondering if there's anything available for that.
Unfortunately, I do not believe that there is any type of exemption. I know that there was no exemption prior to the COVID, and I have not heard anything otherwise as well. So if I'm incorrect, somebody please correct me from my team. But yeah, I believe that earnings limitation that you're talking about is still in effect.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Karen, there's a couple of questions in the Q&A as well.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and read out Michael's. Mike from Los Angeles Academy of Arts and Enterprise, can you please repeat the information about payouts and reporting as compensated credit?
I believe it's talking about that compensated leaves of absence. So if you are providing compensated leave of absence, maybe in simpler terms, maybe some kind of vacation leave. Let's just say most people are familiar with vacation time, and you provide that to your employees. Your employee takes advantage of that vacation time. Maybe they take a week off, and you're still paying them as if they were there because they have that 40 hours of accumulated vacation leave. Then you are still going to report that to us as if they were still working. It's not going to impact their salary or their earnings, right? Because they do have that leave credit. However, if they never ever take vacation and they end up retiring and they have 1,000 hours of vacation leave accumulated, if they want to cash it out, or if there's an agreement, some kind of MOU where it says, hey, yeah, you can cash out your leave, that's fine. They can cash it out with you and you can pay them a lump sum. That's not going to be considered creditable to CalSTRS. Of course, if they're out and there is no banked leave time for them, then that would probably be something a little bit different, where maybe they may go on dock, or they would have lesser earnings or something like that. But typically, it's going to be where as far as the reporting goes, it's going to look like they were there, right? So because they have that banked leave. I hope that answers your question, Michael.
And then we have a question from Talina. What if a district is adding hours per day instead of adding base days? Would the extra hour apply to the member's contract, or would the extra hour get reported as an additional assignment? Code 57 versus code 55.
I think that would really, if you're actually adding more longer days in their bargaining agreement, then I could see that would just be their regular, now it's their new contracted time that they need to be working. If they receive a salary increase because they're going to be there for more time, then that would just be considered their regular full-time assignment. I think a lot of this stuff, it really does depend on how things are contracted and on how things are negotiated. But yeah, if you're giving them longer days and paying them more for it, and in their contract now it says instead of 6 hours a day, they're working 7 hours a day, we've updated the salary schedule, then that would be considered their salary. They're 57.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. A follow-up from Talina.
Okay.
If a district negotiates FFCRA COVID leave or offers additional illness pay to cover COVID-related absences, both scenarios are considered creditable compensation. I think the question is, are they considered creditable compensation?
Right, yes. So those would be considered employer-approved leaves of absence. So yes, they would be treated as creditable compensation. That's correct.
And then Kimberly has a question regarding sick leave. Ed code and contract language references 10 days of sick leave a year. Anything over we show as excess for our 11-month teachers. Is that not correct?
Ooh, I do believe it's now 12 days a year. I would have to do more digging on that, education code and to look that up just to confirm, but that was my understanding. That I believe there was a change recently.
I don't know if we have anyone from service retirement on the call, or maybe Joycelyn can answer that one too.
Hello. Yeah, this is Joycelyn. There was a provision in AB 2101 from last year that updated the sick leave sections of the teachers' retirement law. And so it's 12 days is basic, and it was a clarification. So it's been that way for a little bit, but just to say, clarified last year, 12 days is basic. Anything above that are considered excess sick leave days.
Thank you, Joycelyn. Appreciate that.
Okay, so thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just open up the general forum questions, and we'll keep Karen up if there are questions that reference the information that she presented. So we do have a question from Janelle. Would the only time excess sick leave come into play is if the language states all employees in a specific group were going to be granted more than 12 days of sick leave? Leave granted for COVID is not included in the 12-day count. Is that correct?
Excuse me. So for leave granted for COVID, if it's a specific leave that you are giving for COVID related type issues, then that would be that employer approved leave of absence. So it would need to be specifically spelled out again in that bargaining agreement, right? You have these days for sick leave, and then you have this chunk of time for the COVID related stuff, which a lot of times the COVID type leave is not necessarily because they're sick with COVID. Maybe they have to care for somebody that has COVID, or maybe like they have to quarantine, or something else that's still COVID related, or maybe they're helping the children with the homeschool or something like that. So it would need to be specifically identified as sick leave in the bargaining agreement, and then the COVID related leaves is fine. It would just be, it's not in that same sick leave bucket though. So that would not count towards that excess or basic sick leave.
Okay, any other questions about anything from today's presentations for any of our presenters, or anything else that you have on your that you want to ask about while we have you here? I think I saw
We've got some hands coming up.
hand. Yeah, so let's go ahead and start with Lucinda. It's the one that's at the top of my list. Go ahead and unmute Lucinda, and then we'll go to Tammy.
Hi again. Just one more question on the exemptions. Is there any STRS exemptions available at all? Is there any exemptions for the retirees?
There is an exemption for that separation from service requirement. There is a form, and there needs to be a board approved, a resolution. Sorry, I can't remember the word. There are a few things that you would need to do in order to, and it has to be for, I think, a critically needed position that you would have to do in order to bring someone back to work within that 180-day separation from service period. But other than that, there are no other exemptions.
Okay, it's just coming back early within that 180 days.
Right, exactly.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Okay.
And we do have plans to do some more working after retirement training at our next EAC. So that is on our agenda. So if there are more questions about that, hopefully they'll get answered then as well.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go ahead and move to Tammy. Tammy, if you want to unmute, please.
Hi, good morning, or good afternoon, I should say. I'm not sure that I necessarily have a question, more comments that for the new pension solution program, project, whatever it's called. I think someone asked, is it difficult? I think as a county office, it is difficult because we're having to program our new system. So I would strongly recommend, if COEs have not already started working with their payroll provider or in-house payroll, that they do so really quickly, because our challenges have come around the areas that are different from existing file layout and the new file layout. and we're now in, January, February, and discovering things as we upload our file that we then need to go back and address. And we are working with the readiness team, and they're very responsive in assisting us, but one of the things we're struggling with right now, as an example, is that non-members and outgrowth, we cannot report a retro for them. So that just doesn't make sense for me. And we're trying then to figure out, okay, well, how do we determine if something was outgrowth in our payroll system? And that was based on a job code. And, I know the rules on outgrowth are different, and that it's work in addition to, your annual position. And that's just one example. And another one that we've come up with recently is on reduced workload. Okay, now that we're reporting an annual pay rate, if they work an additional assignment, now that's being combined with the base pay, should it, would it, shoulda, woulda, coulda type of thing. So those are the areas that take a lot of time and cause someone to make a decision on. And right now it's falling on the COE to make that decision based on what we hear from the readiness team, based on what our system can actually do, that sort of thing. So anyway, I just wanted to comment that it's doable and we'll get through it, but it takes time. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you, Tammy. We do have a sick leave follow-up from Dory. Please clarify excess, basic, and COVID sick leave are tracked separately by the employer. Correct. That is correct. And also, if COVID sick leave is granted, is it used before basic? So what I will say, and Karen, you can hop in here too. I think what we're doing is we're looking at that COVID leave as Karen mentioned, as sort of just approved admin leave. It's not banked like sick leave and excess. And so we're talking about two very different buckets of information. It's not like if you're granting COVID leave, are we gonna require you, or do we require you to use them in a certain order like there is with excess versus basic? It's something completely different. It happens to be illness related. So don't let that confuse you that it is sick leave versus just a separate leave. So whether or not you're asking your employees to use their COVID leave before any other leave is not of CalSTRS's concern. It's really the correct. So Dory's follow-up is the COVID sick leave would not be part of the EBR form, the express benefit report, and that's correct. The part that is the EBR is their basic and excess only. You wouldn't have any other leave associated with anything else on your EBR. So hopefully I think that gets to the heart of it. Any other questions? Hey, Diane, I know we have some housekeeping issues regarding the next EAC dates, if you want to jump in there.
There's actually one more question in the Q&A.
Ramona, revisit the available training to clear up the confusion in coding for determining earnings that are reportable to DB versus DBS. I will, again, as when Mia was on, refer you to the creditable compensation, creditable service training that we have in PALMS. Again, it's not so much about whether or not it's reportable to DB or reportable to DBS. It's what is the service and how is it being paid, and who is it being paid to, when you're talking about 2% at 60, 2% at 62. So there's a whole lot of things that go into that. And I would absolutely recommend that if you have questions regarding that, to reach out to our training team and get some clarification there. Also, your employer services representative. Mia, do you want to jump in with some guidance here too as well, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we mentioned, there are some things that we really don't look at it DB, DBS. So and something that goes directly to DBS, off the top of my head, so like a limited term payment for a 2% at 60 member. That's really specific and doesn't encompass the way we really look at these payments or how these payments should be looked at. It's not like you're trying to necessarily identify, okay, so what's 2% at 60 limited term so I can make sure that all goes to DBS. It's really starting from, are they performing creditable service? are they earning creditable compensation? Is it meeting the requirements to be creditable compensation? And then is it salary or remuneration in addition to salary? Is it paid every pay period so it can be reportable for those 2% at 62 members? Some things in our system roll over to DBS. They don't automatically go to DBS, they roll over to DBS. And so that can also cause a little bit of confusion. So anything over a year of service credit rolls over to DBS, but because it's salary, it's initially reported to the defined benefit program. So I understand that that may have previously been a way of thinking of it, but I highly recommend kind of stepping away from that way of thinking. And then we have, as Kim mentioned, the creditable compensation CBT. We do quarterly trainings on this, and I know those can fill up rather quickly. So I do understand that that is something that we, just due to limitations at this time. But you can also reach out to employer help to request a training for your county. And that's something we can work on with you. But I also highly recommend the F496 quick reference sheet that's in the Secure Employer website to show if it's specifically on what codes to use. And I know some counties based on your payroll system, you might even use different codes. But if you are using the F496 coding system, to check out that quick reference sheet to match up some of that. And then for specific questions on specific payments, super important that that comes to employer help at CalSTRS.com. And if you have a case where you're wondering, well, why was this one creditable and why wasn't this one creditable? That's something we can also explain to you if you provide us that information. And we can explain what happened, especially if they're a recent inquiry. And we can explain why those payments were different to help you understand. A lot of this is subjective to contract language and other factors. So it's hard to kind of just say, well, every single time this happens now and this happens then. It really is just so subjective to that contract language. So we can definitely work with you to get that clarified.
Thank you, Mia. And again, our training unit is available if you want to reach out for specific training. And I'm thinking that we will also look at, maybe not on the next EAC agenda because we already have a training set up for working after retirement, but maybe on the one following that we will add some clarification and maybe some overview on creditable service and creditable compensation for you. But again, there are trainings, great trainings that the training team has put together available on POMS for you. So with that, Diane, if you want to go ahead and talk about the housekeeping items you have, and I'm going to jump into the Q&A chat here.
No problem. So I did want to remind folks, there is a 1-question survey. So after leaving the meeting, before closing your browser window, if you wouldn't mind just responding to the survey, that would again be greatly appreciated. The meeting dates are on today's agenda, but want to go through that with folks. So our next scheduled EAC is going to be May 12th. It will be virtual. Then our August date and our November date are still tentative, pending the CalSTRS and the CalPERS board meeting schedules. So once those get finalized, we'll be making final decisions and firming up the dates, also firming up the platform. Obviously, we're all tracking and following COVID, and that may create some additional limitations on size of gatherings and travel. Obviously, we have always made EAC available via video and website, so that will continue. Of course, it's just whether there'll be an in-person opportunity or not. The August date that we're looking at, again, tentatively planned for, is August 4th. November tentative date is November 10th. So again, May 12th for sure, so put that on the calendar, and then pencil in August 4 and November 10. And with that, again, just made mention of the survey. So I know we're approaching the 2 o'clock hour, want to be sensitive to everybody's time. Again, thank everybody for their participation and attendance today. Questions, again, please feel free to reach out to us, again, via responding to advisory committee at CalSTRS.com. You can also submit questions to externalaffairs@calstrs.com, and we'll get those routed as well. But with that, again, just appreciate everybody's time today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I did answer a bunch of questions in the Q&A. Most of them required additional detail. So a lot of the things where you guys come in with asking specifics on how to report something or how something gets handled from a whether it's creditable service or how to report a specific type of compensation, we're going to need you to reach out to employer help at CalSTRS.com, or if you know who your employer services representative is, please reach out to them so that we can get some more detail. Without that additional detail and knowing a little bit more about how that was bargained for your employees, we can't give you a generic answer in a forum like this. And with that, I will have myself and my staff stick around if there's any lingering questions in the Q&A. Otherwise, we thank you again for attending our EAC. We know that doing it like this in Zoom is not ideal, but we're happy to have you here and happy to help in any way that we can.
Thanks, and we'll see everybody on May 12th.
Talina, you still have your hand raised. Did you want to ask something?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I was wondering, is there any chance that CalSTRS is going to publish a circular regarding COVID pay or the COVID paid leaves? Because I know when the federal government passed the FFCRA, there was a blurb about how that would be considered credible comp, but now that it's not being extended and districts are trying to negotiate COVID type of related leaves, are you guys planning on following up saying, you know, this is okay to report as credible comp and maybe add the piece that it's not being considered or it won't be considered excess or basic sick leave?
Karen, do you want to answer?
Yeah. Yeah, Talina, yes, we are actually working on a circular letter. I guess I should have mentioned that earlier when I was speaking. Sorry about that. But we are working on one. We're hoping to get that out, you know, while COVID is still around, so that it relates, right? So I'm not sure of when we'll have it. We are in the process of writing it as we speak. So hopefully we'll get that out to you really, really soon.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone.